Today we are discussing one of the most infamous murders in Beverly Hills history. Erik and Lyle Menendez were two spoiled boys who murdered their parents for money. Or were they? Are the brothers charming sociopathic murderers? Or are they abuse victims who thought they had no other option? Join us as we discuss the family, the crime, and the outcome. I'm Sammy.
And I'm Nicole,
and we are Spooky Sleuths.
Hey guys.
Hello.
Welcome back to Spooky Sleuths.
I'm so excited for this episode, not because I'm excited about the case in details, but I have fallen into the Menendez brothers trap, and I have been obsessed with the case for the past few weeks. So I'm ready to get all this out of my brain.
She's gone down rabbit hole after rabbit hole after rabbit hole, and it's very enlightening, some of the things, at least you've told me you've found, but I don't really know much about the case other than what is shown on Ryan Murphy's Monsters.
Right.
And what you have told me, but you haven't told me everything because we wanted to be able to talk about it today.
Yes, exactly. So buckle in. This is going to be a very long episode.
Grab a coffee, grab a snack. It's seriously, I normally hate when people say that, but legitimately, this is going to be a lengthy one.
It is. I couldn't find a good stopping point. I just had to get all of this out of my brain. Before we get started, I want to talk about a couple things. First is, this is a very controversial case that has regained popularity partially from the new Netflix series Monster, the Lyle and Erik Menendez story. I want to be clear that this is not an interpretation of that show. Now, I did watch it, and that did push me towards learning as much about this case as possible. I watched the new Netflix documentary, The Menendez Brothers, the Peacock series, Menendez and Menudo, Boys Betrayed.
You put work in.
I did. I watched hours of Erik and Lyle's testimonies. I watched all of their direct examinations and about half of each of their cross examinations. So there may be something in the cross that I missed because I didn't have a chance to watch all of it. I mean, I probably watched 20 hours of testimony.
At least.
So
you had like a whole work week worth of testimony watching.
It was bad. But I also watched experts in law and body language talk about this case. Some of the topics in this episode are theories, rumors, or unverified facts. But as always, I will call those out when they occur.
If we know that they...
Right.
Like, if we're aware.
Most of what is in this episode is based off of their testimony. I did include things that I'm not sure about, but I tried my best to point that out.
I may wind up comparing it to the Netflix docuseries because that's what I have watched.
Right. But... And not everything in that is true because it's obviously a TV show.
It's dramatized, and I knew that going in. But
a lot of hate going to that show.
Yeah.
But I appreciated it because it showed the different perspectives.
Yeah.
So I could see what the media was saying, see what the boys' side was, see what the parents' side could have been. I appreciated that. And it made me want to dig deeper and find out what was real. But all we have to go on is Erik and Lyle's testimony. We don't get to hear Jose and Kitty's side of things. Not that I think they would admit to anything, but take this...
Especially back when it was occurring.
Right. I just want you to take this for what it is. It's mainly coming from their testimony.
So that means a lot of this episode is hearsay. Like it...
Right.
We're never going to know the truth because we've got Lyle's side, Erik's side, the parents' side, and then the truth.
Right.
And so this is a mix of what all we could find.
I also didn't know 100% if I believed them after watching Monsters because it was actors. So that
and
drove
they were
me.
good.
They were really
good.
Great. But it drove me to watch the actual testimony because I wanted to see for myself how they portrayed it.
Yeah.
Did it look fake? Did it look staged? I don't think so, but if you're questioning it, that's my recommendation. I didn't know, like I said, I didn't know how I felt about it, so I watched the trial testimony. I do know now how I feel, but we can talk about that at the end. I encourage you all to reach your own conclusions and let us know what you think at the end. The final thing before we dig in is a trigger warning for verbal, physical, and sexual abuse. Please make sure you are in the mental space to handle this, as it can be difficult to hear some of the things we're going to talk about, because we're going to talk about things in detail. The same detail that they had to talk about them. To an extent.
Yeah, I was like, oh no.
To an extent. But before we actually start with this next, I'm curious to know what your opinion is right now on it. Are you pro Erik and Lyle, anti Erik and Lyle, or somewhere in the middle?
I guess I'd fall somewhere in the middle because I don't think there is ever a reason to take someone's life. But also, once you have been backed in that corner, I don't know what I would do if I would have been in their shoes. So
Do you believe their abuse allegations?
I think so. I think that they may have pushed a little, like, dug in their heels into it to where it almost is like, no, wait a minute.
Yeah.
But I don't not believe them, if that makes any sense at all.
And that's where I was. I don't think someone could make up some of these details that I'm going to share.
Right. Like I said, I don't know. I didn't watch any of the testimony with you. This is all new for me.
And you don't know what was real versus what was not real in the documentaries or in the monster series, except a couple things.
Yeah, I was like, except a couple things, because I've mentioned them to you, and you're like, hey, that's not real.
Yeah. Now that all of that is out of the way, let's dig in. Let's start with Jose and Kitty Menendez.
Where it all starts.
Unfortunately. Jose was born on May 6th, 1944 in Havana, Cuba. He spent most of his early life in Cuba with his mother, father, and 2 sisters. Both of his parents were athletes in Cuba, with his father being a well-known soccer player and his mother a swimmer. His mother is actually in Cuba's Sports Hall of Fame.
Really?
Yes. It has been said that his life wasn't the easiest as a Menendez. While the children...
It's Cuba.
Right.
Cuba in the
60s and 70s.
Yeah, of course it wasn't. No one can argue that. Like, of course it was going to be difficult, not just for a Menendez, but to live in Cuba.
Right. While the children wanted for nothing, it is rumored that Jose's father and mother were abusive to their children. His father would beat the children and place unreasonable expectations on them. His mother was supposedly sexually abusive towards Jose. This is not verified, but I want to share it with that precaution. Jose's mother would supposedly fondle his genitals as a toddler until he had an erection and then proceed to laugh at him and make fun of him for it. I'm sharing as it could be, not a reason for his future actions, but possibly an explanation. I mean, trauma breeds trauma breeds trauma, so...
I was literally about to say the same thing, but abuse breeds abuse. Yes. Breeds abuse. You do what you know.
Yes. So it could be false, though. Jose came to the United States in 1960 when he was 16 years old. Just a year prior, Fidel Castro staged a coup and overthrew the government. Fidel Castro took the property that was owned by upper middle class and the upper class. Jose's family was in the upper middle class, and they lost their home, and his father owned several rental properties that he lost. His father encouraged him to leave, but he left with nothing. He didn't have a penny to his name, but he did have his sister's fiancé who came with him. The Menendez family had friends in Pennsylvania, so the boys moved there. Jose attended high school in Pennsylvania and turned out to be a great swimmer, just like his mom. He earned a scholarship to Southern Illinois University in Carbondale on a swimming scholarship, but the training schedule was too much for him to handle. Jose transferred to Queens College in New York City and graduated with an accounting degree. Before he transferred, he already met his future wife, Kitty, in a debate class. Kitty was born Mary Louise Anderson in 1941 in Oak Lawn, Illinois, just outside of Chicago.
Did we know why she was named Kitty? Because that's so weird.
That's just
to me.
a nickname.
I know, but who does that?
I don't know.
I mean, every time I hear Kitty, I think of that 70s show.
Right.
But
do not associate that beautiful...
that lovely mother.
Lovely woman.
Who
with
took
Kitty.
in all the neighborhood kids. Like, that Kitty was impeccable.
We should all aspire to be that Kitty. Not this Kitty.
Not Kitty Menendez. No.
She grew up in the middle class with her parents and 4 siblings. Her father owned a heating and cooling business, and her mother really didn't have to work. Her father was abusive towards the family, especially Kitty's mother. He did beat the children, too. Her parents divorced while she was a child, and that is a big theme throughout Kitty's life. She swore she would never be a divorcee. Kitty did not make friends easily and suffered with depression, but she did graduate and started attending Southern Illinois University. She aspired to be an actress, so she studied communications. Kitty was smart, but she was also very beautiful. She won the 1962 Oaklawn Beauty Pageant, so it's no wonder she caught Jose's eye. Kitty was a senior in college when she met Jose while he was a sophomore. When Jose transferred to Queens College, she moved with him. Both of their families were objecting to them being together, especially when it came to marriage. Jose's family believed he was way too young to get married, but they did so anyway in 1963. Kitty would use her education to become a school teacher, placing her acting dreams on hold. 5 years into their marriage, Jose and Kitty welcomed their first child, Joseph Lyle Menendez. Lyle was born. Jose made Kitty quit her job to stay at home with him. Jose would be the breadwinner for the family as he passed the CPA exam upon graduating college and put the work in to become a successful businessman.
Because he was accounting?
Yes.
Like, that's what CPA is, the
Yes.
certified public accountant?
Yeah. Yep.
Something along those.
Jose was known for being highly intelligent and very diligent. However, he was very much disliked by his coworkers. They thought he was arrogant, rude, and abrasive. The family moved quite a bit, it seems. When I was watching the testimonies given by both Erik and Lyle, I truly could not keep up with all their different houses. What I do know is that they first settled down in Princeton, New Jersey, before moving to Calabasas, and finally Beverly Hills.
And the Calabasas to Beverly Hills move was because of the robberies, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And Beverly Hills is where their home
Everything
was that
occurred.
yes. Jose and Kitty had a second son in 1970 named Erik Galen Menendez. They seemed like the picture-perfect family from the outside. They had 2 sons, one carrying on Jose's name. They had money, and they had status. Jose, however, was not the perfect husband. He had unreasonably high expectations for his wife and especially his children. We'll talk about them in a minute, along with how Jose treated them, but first let's talk about Jose's numerous affairs. Jose was unfaithful to his wife with several women over the years.
There's only one thing that I really can't forgive in a person, and it is legitimately cheating. I have stopped talking to people I love.
You'll be out of my life.
No, exactly. Like, I have cut people off because of that, because that's the one thing you don't do to somebody else.
Yeah.
Just leave.
He did have one long-term on-again, off-again relationship with a woman named Louise. Kitty knew about Louise. In fact, she followed Louise, and this is the only time I will be praising her because she is truly a disgusting human being. But for this, it was kind of badass because she followed his mistress and took pictures of her in New York City so she would have proof that Jose was cheating.
Which takes guts in the 70s.
Yeah. So that's the only thing that I will say that you go, girl.
So it's like,
otherwise, I hate her.
Where did this switch flip for that woman? You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because it seemed like she was headstrong. I mean, she went to college. What happened? Okay.
Jose's affairs did a number on Kitty. She
Right.
was very depressed and angry, so she resorted to alcohol and prescription drug abuse.
Kitty, and you said that she had such a anti-divorce
Yep,
thing.
she did not want a divorce. And Jose was too worried about his public image to go through a divorce anyway.
Right. I'm just saying, like, Kitty wouldn't have seen that as a way out, is what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
Even though it absolutely is. Every time. Leave.
Unless you're Dave or CJ, you're not allowed to leave us.
No, because I need CJ to help me pay bills because I don't know how. But
Jose worked his way up from Hertz Rental Car to being an executive at RCA Records. Though his dream and ultimate goal was even more public-facing, He wanted to move the family to Florida to an island with a bunch of houses for his family. He wanted a compound to keep everyone close to him, and he planned to become the first Cuban-American senator in Florida.
Had that happened, we'd be talking about the Menendez cult, not the Menendez murders.
Right. Jose always told the boys that they would go into politics or business. He wanted them to be like the Kennedys. So Jose was very concerned with his public image. In fact, when Lyle began to lose his hair at age 16, Jose was not having it. Let that just sink in. He is 16 and losing his hair. Does that not scream the amount of stress that child is under?
Yeah. Because that's not something that just happens at the age of 16. People bald early in like their 30s and 40s.
Or some even in their 20s start losing their hair. But for a teenager,
yeah, that's not normal.
Very rare. But like I said, Jose was not having it. He made him get screws in his head so a wig could hook on. Lyle protested, but Jose forced him to have one. He would have rather just shaved his head. Jose had different relationships with both of his boys. He favored Lyle and really disliked Erik. He forced both boys into sports at a young age. They played soccer, tennis, and swimming. Jose was adamant that his children be strong, powerful men in all areas, including sports. Throughout the years, Jose would hire and fire over 50 tennis coaches because they weren't good enough for him or harsh enough on the boys.
So because they're not beating his children, there's a problem?
Yeah, they went easy on them. If the coaches became friendly with the boys or with Kitty, they were out. Of course, some quit too because they couldn't deal with Jose.
Yeah.
Jose was a strict disciplinarian, controlling every aspect of the children's lives. He dictated what sports they played, what they ate, what they did during the day, everything. He literally would study what foods were best for tennis performance, and that's what the boys would have to eat. If a new article came out, he would change their diet. The boys had a strict studying routine, but not for schoolwork. They had to, or at least Lyle did. I believe Erik did too, but I couldn't remember. They had to memorize passages from a book Jose loved filled with self-help affirmations. I'm all about self-help affirmations. But what does like a 6-year-old need that for?
Like other than putting your 6-year-old in front of the mirror and have them saying, I'm smart, I'm strong.
It was more like, I will control my emotions today.
What 6-year-old is controlling any kind of emotions?
Right. I will decide what kind of man I'm going to be today. Those types of things.
Child.
And that he would have to recite them.
That's crazy.
Jose would even call home to make sure that they were reciting them properly. Neither of the boys did their own schoolwork. They would have to take tests at school, but homework was for Jose and Kitty because the parents believed they could do it better, and it was a waste of time for the boys who needed to focus on tennis. Just imagine that. They aren't doing their homework. They just study for tests. They would even turn in all their schoolwork at the end of the year, which was acceptable because of their athletic status at the school.
That is absolutely insanity. And how is... Hang on, Jose. How is Jose going to expect his children to go on to be politicians and businessmen, which I'm sure he wants them going to an elite school?
He does?
If they can't do their homework and pass tests, how are they going to thrive in the college aspect of it?
Right.
If you're doing all their elementary stuff.
And Jose did want them to go to elite schools.
Of course.
Lyle would go to Princeton.
Of course he
and
did.
Erik would go to the University of California. I think it was the Irvine campus. In his testimony, Erik said he was accepted at all the UC campuses, so it's unclear about that. Jose wasn't just a strict father, but he was also abusive. Many witnesses report hearing Jose belittle and bully the boys. Whether he was screaming at them during tennis or ridiculing their girlfriends, he was very, very mean. Jose was even banned from tennis matches at one point because his behavior towards the boys, the coaches, and the referees.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
They're children. It's not like he's in the pro elites.
And they were very good. I think Erik was in like the top 40, top 50 in the entire country.
I think I did hear that he was ranked as a very like a young adult. Like
Yes, he
18,
was
19.
very high ranked in tennis. So they were good. But one of the people that I watched.
At what cost?
Right. One of the people that I watched that talks about this, that's a different show, and they have like lawyers come on and everything. He actually grew up in Princeton with the Menendez brothers, and they played tennis together at the club. So, and he's like, they were very good. I don't know if they get out if we can play tennis together now. But another thing he controlled was who they dated. Jose did not want the boys to date girls from a broken home or who he did not determine worthy. When Lyle was 19, he was dating a girl he really liked, but Jose and Kitty did not approve of her. She ended up getting pregnant with Lyle's baby, and Jose forced her to have an abortion and paid her to keep quiet about it. Lyle was never to see her again. And I think that baby would be in their late 30s now. So that's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
Erik, on the other hand, was forced to get a girlfriend. Like, given a 6-month deadline to get a girlfriend.
That's weird. That's weird, right?
It is. Both his mother and father would call him gay, would call him the F word, and made him feel like being gay was worse than death.
Which, unfortunately, for the time, that tracks, because that's how...
Oh, God, and could you imagine a gay politician? Oh, my God. Now we're fine. Okay, now not even everyone's fine with that.
Right.
We're fine with that.
Yeah.
We don't care. But back then, no.
Like, even today, people have a hard time, like...
Not everyone's as woke as we are.
Right, and... Oh, gee, Christmas. But, yeah, a lot of people, whenever they are first discovering themselves, still struggle.
Yes.
But could you imagine if Erik Menendez would have came out to Jose?
Oh, God, no.
That would be so... It wouldn't have ended the way it did. It would have ended with Erik dying.
Yeah. And Erik has said in his testimony, he said something about... He talked about how gay people were so bad, and he was calling me the F word, and I just wanted to look at him and say, if I'm an F word, what are you? And that'll make a lot of sense here in a few minutes. And because it's true. Like, what you don't even
like,
make
Jose,
sense.
you're projecting.
Right. Jose would also ridicule Erik for being weak, pathetic, and not worthy of the Menendez name. Both of them heard they weren't worthy of the Menendez name. I can't stress enough how bad he talked to his children, that they were afraid of him just from the verbal abuse.
Not even entertaining anything else.
Right. He would just be so controlling and flat out mean and cruel to his kids. But let's talk about physical abuse. Jose was no stranger to hitting his children. He would
and it gets a lot worse than that. So if you need to click off.
Yeah.
We're
okay. Scratching the surface right now.
Right. And I am going to attempt to put timestamps in our description as best I can to try and, like, if physical abuse isn't something that you want to hear all the dirty details.
Right.
I'll have the next part in there. I'm gonna try.
He would frequently punch, slap, and beat his children. There was no evidence that he hit Kitty, but the boys would often have bruises and testified to several instances where Jose would just punch them if they did something or said something wrong. Lyle told a story during his testimony that he and his father would frequent this deli in Princeton, New Jersey after his soccer practice. The deli owner was familiar with him and one day snuck a pastry into a bag for him. When Lyle got outside where he thought his dad couldn't see him, he ate the pastry. He was a little kid. Well, Jose saw this, ripped it from his hands, and punched him in the stomach. Once when Jose was demeaning to him during a tennis practice, Lyle told him to shut up. He was like, "What? Will you just shut up already?" After the practice, Jose took him to the car and punched him in the face. He still has a scar on his lip from this incident.
I mean, I don't like being told to shut up either, but there's a way to handle that.
Right. If your daughter tells you to shut up, you're not going to punch her in the face.
No.
But this is kind of why you can kind of see how they were trained to not speak out against their father. If they did something he didn't approve of, he would punch them. Not spanking, punching, or slapping.
Yeah, this isn't the corporal punishment that so many people are still behind today. This is...
Right. This is abuse. There's a point where it changes from disciplining your children to abuse. So keep that in mind, that they have that fear in them that something is going to happen to them if they speak out against their father.
And just hearing this little bit, where Bailey even got into it, this tells me that Jose, I guarantee you, just thinks, I'm just disciplining my children.
Yeah.
This is how you're supposed to do this. This is what will keep them in line.
Right. He would also do things that, in my opinion, were on the verge of torture. To make them better swimmers, Jose would hold them underwater. He wanted to make them tougher, he would say, so he would make them hold their breath longer. He would forcefully hold his children's head under the water until he felt they were down there long enough.
That sounds more like attempted murder to me.
Right? One of the brothers testified that there was an instance where Jose took them out on a boat to the middle of the lake. I believe this was Erik's testimony. He told them to jump out and swim to the shore. But before that, he told them all about the snapping turtles that lived in the lake. So they were terrified, especially Erik. Lyle made it to shore, but Erik was struggling. So Lyle came back and helped him get to shore.
And Lyle was the strong swimmer, right?
Yeah.
And Erik was like the big tennis guy.
They were both big in tennis, but they both had to learn swimming too.
Yeah.
Jose was not pleased that Lyle helped out Erik, so he made them do it again on their own to separate sides of the lake. Jose also used the boys' pets to torment them. They had a dog once who was kind of a mean dog, but not to Erik and Lyle. He was mean to strangers and other animals. I believe that the dog killed their pet ferret, but I'm not 100% sure. I couldn't really find a solid reasoning. But Jose killed their family dog. Not only did he kill it, but he cut the head off and put the head in the refrigerator so the boys would find it.
Who does that?
Your family pet. Any pet.
Any animal. That is insanity.
Yeah. Once Lyle brought home a pet rabbit from school, Kitty told him to get rid of it, but he didn't. He's a little kid. It was like their class pet. They had class animals, and he got to bring home the rabbit. One day, Lyle couldn't find the rabbit.
Oh, no.
He asked his father, and his father told him to look in the trash. On top of the trash was the dead rabbit with his head bashed in. So Jose bashed this rabbit's head in and then left it on the top of the trash for Lyle to find.
Why wouldn't you just call the teacher, hey, we cannot keep this pet?
Right. Give it back.
It's like, hey, I'm going to bring this. Can you meet me somewhere? This isn't going to work for our family.
Or even just let it loose. I don't know if rabbits can survive in the wild after they've been domesticated. I don't know. But yeah, still. Then there was the sexual abuse. Jose abused both of his sons sexually. When Lyle was 6 years old, Jose began giving him massages after tennis practice. These massages turned sexual when Jose began, quote-unquote, massaging Lyle's penis. 6 years old. He would force Lyle to take showers with him, perform oral sex on him, and do what Jose called object sessions. During these sessions, Jose would insert various items into Lyle's anus. I'm saying this as delicately as I can. Jose would insert various items into Lyle's anus. He would use toothbrushes, shaving tools, and sometimes without Vaseline.
What does he think that's going to accomplish?
Well, this was to prepare him for when Jose decided it was time to sodomize him.
Okay, let me rephrase. How did he tell his child, like, this is what we're doing? Like, was it strictly just abuse, or did he...
I don't think there was any explanation behind it. I think it was get on all fours.
We're doing this?
We're doing, yeah.
I wasn't sure if it was like, this will help you be a better tennis player.
Well, we'll
get there?
there.
Okay. Again, I know nothing. I didn't even read Sammy's episode as she wrote it or anything. I don't have it up on my screen now, so I...
This lasted for 2 years, this sexual abuse. When Lyle was 8 years old, he told Jose that he was hurting him, and he asked him to stop.
And he's still just objects now, because I'm sorry I got us off.
No, he did sodomize
him too.
Yes. Okay. So Jose stopped and told Lyle that he loved him, and he didn't mean to hurt him. It was also around 6 when Jose started teaching Lyle about the Roman Empire, or at least his favorite parts about the Roman Empire. Jose believed these were real men, strong men, and he was supposed to be just like him. Jose would tell Lyle about how all the men would sleep together as a way to bond and become strong for war.
Oh.
So that's the reasoning he gave for abusing his son.
Okay.
Jose told Lyle that this was completely normal. This is what his father did to him and what Lyle will do with his own children. And that is from Lyle's testimony. I don't have any proof that Jose said that. That is what Lyle says he said. Just making that clear because he is accusing his father of doing the same. So, Jose began sexually abusing Erik when he was also 6 years old.
So Lyle would have been 8.
Yes, right after he stopped with Lyle. Okay. The pattern repeated itself, beginning with massages, then penis massages, then showers, then object sessions, and then sodomizing. Jose would actually take showers with both of the boys at the same time. During the showers, he would turn the water extremely hot or extremely cold and jump out and make the boys stay in. He would laugh and taunt them while they begged to be let out.
And I'm sure they couldn't just adjust the water.
Oh, God, no. I read somewhere about him making the boys sexually touch each other, but I did not hear that during the trial testimony, so I'm not saying that as a fact. That is one of the rumors out there, is that he forced them to be sexual with each other. What is fact, however, is that Lyle did sexually abuse Erik when he was 8 years old and Erik was 6.
So basically after Jose stopped with him.
And I think it might have been the end of Jose's time with him. Yeah, I think it might have been at the end of Lyle and Jose before Jose started with Erik, is what I believe the timeline is. I could be wrong.
Yeah, you had said that it was hard to follow the timelines in the testimony because they jumped all over the place.
Right. Lyle took Erik out to the woods and performed object sessions with him. To me, this is very sad, but not in the way you may think. Of course, it's sad that Erik was abused by both his father and brother. But it's also sad that Lyle repeated the same behavior that was being done to him. While giving his testimony and crying, Lyle admitted to this and apologized. He said he didn't like it when it happened to him, so he didn't know why he did it to his brother. But this is something that is normal, unfortunately, for children who have been abused. They repeat the behavior that has been done to them. I don't think Lyle should feel as much guilt about it as he does, in a way, because I don't believe it was really his fault. I mean, of course it was wrong, but he was 8 years old. And we've talked about his life up to that point, being sexually abused by his father and being told it was normal.
So he didn't know again, abuse is abuse.
Right.
And that's not okay no matter the circumstances. However, you also have to look at, a lot of times you do what you know.
Yeah.
And if that's how Jose was helping him be strong, maybe he was trying to do the same thing for Erik. I'm not trying to excuse it because there is no excuse.
No, but I don't think Lyle was doing it out of malice. I don't think he was like, I'm going to go hurt my brother today.
I think he must have known it was at least something that you needed to keep behind closed doors
Right.
and stuff, because otherwise why would you take him to the woods?
Yeah.
Like
I think he knew it was wrong. No, I don't think he knew it was wrong.
I don't know how to say that without saying.
I don't think he knew it was wrong. I think he thought it was something that was normal because that's what his father told him. But his father also told him that it had to be kept a secret. You couldn't tell people about it. But it was normal. Everybody did it.
You just didn't talk about it.
That if something is not allowed to be talked about in front of other people, it's not normal.
Right.
But he was 8 years old. I don't know.
And still trusting his father at that point.
Yeah. Erik had it much worse with Jose. Jose would tie a rope around his penis, stick pins and needles into his penis and thighs, and test his strength through the abuse sessions. Erik had names for each of the different forms of sex, as he calls it, with his father. Side note, my stomach turns every time hearing Erik call the abuse sex with my dad. I want to scream at him and tell him that is not sex, that is rape.
And he did that clear through his testimony, didn't he?
Yes, he always referred to it as sex.
And he was an adult at that point, and he was still just calling it sex. Instead of calling a spade, he doesn't... It's not that he doesn't see it that way, but it was so normal for this poor... I guess he's technically an adult. For that poor dude that it was just sex.
Yeah.
And it's not.
Like, it breaks my heart. My eyes are getting watery right now because it breaks my heart. Him sitting there on the stand, I think because he was 18 when this happened. I think he was about 21 when the trial started.
Yeah. So, like, an adult, but he's still a kid, man.
Yeah. Hearing him say sex with my dad just breaks my heart. I just want to take him and hug him and say, honey, that is not sex. And he's been in prison. Spoiler alert, he's in prison, but he's
that's not a spoiler. I think this happened in the 90s. I think everyone's well aware.
So I just, that's why I said sex with my dad, quote unquote, because
that's what he called it.
That's what he said.
Horrifying.
He had names for these. I already said that. He named these forms knees for oral sex, nice for massaging his genitals, sex for anal penetration, and rough sex for when Jose was angry and would beat him or not use any lubrication or just be mean to him while he's doing it. During knees, Jose would often put tacks into his thighs and his butt.
For what purpose?
To torture him. I don't know. I mean, he would straight up punch Erik while he is having this rough sex with him.
Okay, listen. I don't know how to say this. I may have to edit this out. How are you going to punch someone and smack somebody around that has one of your most valuable appendages in their hands, in their mouth? I mean, that is... the amount of trust that would have taken. Because you know how easy it would have been for Erik to clamp down?
Yeah.
Obviously, he didn't.
Oh, no, Jose probably would have killed him.
Right, but...
You know?
But that's what I'm saying. Like, that's... Like, Jose must have known how much control he truly had to feel comfortable having his manhood out. Well, not manhood. I don't even want to call it manhood. Having his wiener out and Erik not bite it off.
Yeah. Not only was the rape worse in general for Erik, but it lasted until he was 18 years old. 6 years old to 18 years old. That's 12 years. At least once a month. I think he said it was a couple times a month. For 12 years.
Part of me wants to scream, how the hell did you let it go on so long? Why didn't you just leave? But starting that young, he was conditioned.
And we've talked about, that's why I wanted to talk about Jose first, to kind of lay the foundation for how he treated his children and the control he had on
And
his
the fear.
children.
And the fear.
Yes.
Because otherwise, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me that he was 18 and still not
fighting back.
Yeah, that. Like, that seems wild, but whenever you're broken down.
Well, when the abuse started, Erik didn't fight back because it was his father. He also felt like this was the only time he saw his dad love him. Because
that is sad. That is disgustingly sad.
He knew his dad hated him. I believe he testified. Well, he did testify. I believe in his testimony, he said, I knew my dad hated me. And then he talked about this is the only time he got love from his dad.
That is gross.
So I can see it. I mean, I haven't been through that, so I can't relate, but
I don't want to say I understand it because I don't. Like, just being honest, but I also can see where the abuse is so, like, it changes your brain chemistry.
It kind of reminds me of how when we talk about cults and we're like, why don't these people just leave? It reminds me of that.
Yeah.
Because Jose has such control over these boys at the time they were boys.
Yeah.
That they're not going to leave. They're not going to fight back. And he knows that.
Yeah.
So it kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah, when it's just wild. Like, just bite it off, Erik. Bite it off.
Well, Erik also told himself that he just had to get through till college.
I mean,
then he could leave and not be abused anymore.
It's sad that is his goal, but at least there is light at the end of his tunnel.
Maybe.
Oh, damn it.
The dream went away when Jose told him where he was going to school and that he would have to be home 3 to 4 nights a week so he could keep tabs on him.
Oh, so he can keep molesting him.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Well, and I think that's why he wanted the family to live on a compound in Florida.
Oh, probably.
So he could have access to Erik.
And it definitely would have been the Menendez cult.
Yeah. Jose also did something similar with Lyle, but Lyle was in Princeton. So to keep tabs on him, they would talk every day for hours. And Lyle would FedEx his homework to Jose for him to complete.
No way. Not once he's in college.
Yeah. Lyle was actually suspended for Princeton for a year due to plagiarism.
Yeah, I'm sure.
He was going to be expelled, but Jose pressured the dean to only suspend him. Since he wasn't in school for that year, Lyle was to work for Jose at RCA.
Oh, like an internship type deal.
Yeah. Not only did Jose keep tabs on them for school, if Erik and Lyle were at a tennis match that Jose couldn't make it to, which I forgot to mention this earlier, sorry, they would have to call Jose afterwards and talk through every single thing they did and what they did wrong. They were not allowed to say they did something good. So, and they would talk for hours, whether it was practice, a match, whatever.
You can only be broken down so many times until you start to think, I can see why they did what they did.
Right.
I'm still not saying it's right. Murder in my head is wrong.
I agree.
On every level.
But this kind of helps you see their mentality at the time. And we'll talk about that at the trial, or whenever we talk about the trial. Jose would do mirror sessions. I don't know what exactly Erik called them. But he would make Erik sit in front of a mirror and say, he would ask him a question like, how did you do in tennis today? If Erik said good, Jose would say wrong and force Erik to slap himself as hard as he could. And if he didn't, Jose did it for him. And he would ask him all these questions, and he said eventually he just learned what his dad wanted to hear.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Just another way to torture him, right? To beat him, to abuse him.
To exert your control that you think you have.
Jose told the same Roman Empire things to Erik as he did Lyle, so Erik genuinely thought that Jose was doing this to him out of love. To make things a little better, Erik had to get creative and try different things. And this is one of those things that I don't think he could have made up. He began putting cinnamon into all of his dad's coffee and some of his food. He thought this would help his dad's semen taste better, as Jose made him swallow his semen.
What the hell?
Yeah. When Jose began complaining about the cinnamon, Erik began putting lemon juice on everything he ate because he thought this would help numb his taste buds so he wouldn't taste it. But that didn't work for him either. That, to me, is an act of desperation.
And that's not something you're just going to make up to say.
Right.
Like, there's all kinds of stories I could think of for them to say, like, oh, this happened. That's not something you just come up sitting talking to your brother about your alibi.
I agree. That's one thing I don't think that they made up. And that is honestly one of the things that makes this convincing for me. Because I don't think they could have made that up. Or
but also,
Erik could have made that up.
This also tells me that Kitty had to know.
Oh, yeah, she knew.
Well, I mean, I know. And they, like, I know the boys, like, address it later.
But she knew from when it was still happening to Lyle.
Right.
Which we'll talk about that too.
But as the, person that I'm sure is organizing all that stuff.
Yeah.
You had to know, and you can't even deny that you didn't know.
Oh, yeah. They asked Lyle. No, I think they asked Erik during his testimony, who bought the lemons? My mother. Did she notice that you were eating an unusual amount of lemons? Yeah, she did. She just bought more. She absolutely knew that I was using all the lemons, so she knew. Yeah. She might not have known that purpose for them.
Right, but
yeah.
But as a mom, if I saw my kid just eating lemons,
you would ask questions?
Yeah, I'm like, so, like, I get lemonade, I get, like, lemon desserts. Why are we eating lemons, man?
Yeah.
Like,
and especially now you will.
I'm not going to have lemons in that house.
This sexual abuse made life very confusing for Erik. As he got older, he began to question his own sexuality.
How could you not?
Right. He thought he could be gay because the sex didn't hurt as bad anymore as he got older. Which is not what that means. But to be clear, Erik denies that he is gay and he is currently married. But this was a huge taboo thing for a wealthy family in the 1980s. I mean, Kitty believed that being gay was worse than death, as I mentioned before. And one theory that the brothers say is not true, this was just a rumor at the time, was that Erik and Lyle were in a relationship.
Yes, that is also what I have seen, like, through different varying platforms of social media that people are most upset with Monster about.
And I think that's one of the things that Erik and Lyle are most upset about too.
Right.
Because they have openly disapproved of that series.
Definitely. But I think I've not talked to Ryan Murphy or anything, but he tried to show all angles, all different, like,
all the rumors.
Right, all the rumors, all the accusations. And that was put out in the world, so. And it wasn't like it was like a main focal point of the series.
No, it was hinted throughout it.
Yeah, but it wasn't like jam in your face.
No. And just to be clear, that is not true. They were never in an incestuous relationship.
Like
that other than the abuse, which
from
is not
dad.
an incestuous relationship.
And the abuse when they were younger.
Right. So that is not true.
Right.
They weren't teenagers in the shower with only each other. I don't think Jose at that point had them both in the shower, but he did have Erik still.
Yeah. False, not fact.
In addition to sexually abusing both of the boys, Jose also took nude pictures of them. He had an envelope with Kitty's handwriting on it, actually, filled with pictures of the boys when they were younger. All the pictures were of the boys from the neck down and focusing on their genitals. They would be nude, just sitting there, or sometimes Jose would make them bend over.
Bruh.
We're obviously not going to show these. I didn't even try to find them to prove they exist because I don't want to see them.
No, but if they were going to talk about it in trial, and I'm pretty sure they had the photos in the trial.
Yes, those were evidence in the trial. But we will put a picture up here that was used in their trial of Jose holding both the boys. They're all fully clothed. But I want you to notice where Jose's left hand is on Lyle. And I want you to know that that picture was published in a magazine and no one questioned it.
Now, I have, like, picked up my child by, like, going underneath of her. That's different. That is
grabbing.
That is grabbing, and that is an older child that you should have no business touching their genitalia anymore.
And he's not doing it to the younger one. Like, he's not holding the younger one like that. He is holding, because this was around the time that he was abusing Lyle.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, because that's Lyle.
Yes.
Sorry, I know they're not twins, but by golly, I get confused.
Now that we've talked about Jose, which I'm sure I missed some things.
Oh, I'm sure there's things that they've still not come out about because that is a lot.
Yeah. And most of this is from memory, from watching their testimonies, and I watched a lot not knowing that I was going to write an episode, so I didn't take notes. I'm sure I missed some things,
or said Lyle said it, and it was actually Erik or something.
Right.
So don't come from us.
I really tried to be as accurate as I could, but I couldn't go rewatch all the trial footage. I did rewatch some parts that I needed clarification on, but for the most part,
that's a lot of information, and that's a lot. I mean, that's triggering for somebody that is just watching it for the knowledge of it.
Yeah.
Let alone having to then rewatch it. No, thank you.
It was tough to sit through.
It's tough to listen to.
But let's talk about Kitty. Kitty was not an innocent bystander who couldn't stand up to her husband, as many portray her to be.
She's portrayed like that, a monster. I mean, they go into a little bit of Kitty being weird, but nothing
right.
Crazy. Nothing like Jose.
But she was abusive to both boys in her own way. As I mentioned, she hated Lyle. She flat out hated him. And she told him she hated him.
Do you think it was actually a fear of him? I only ask because that's how they portray it in Monsters, that she was scared of Lyle.
I don't think so. From all accounts, both boys were very mild-tempered. They were good kids. No one said anything negative about them.
So the fear thing might have just been a dramatization with Monster. Okay.
I think so. I don't know for sure, but from other witnesses, I don't see how that would be a thing. People do have different personalities behind closed doors.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying absolutely not, but based on
like
witnesses
well known or anything, they didn't discuss it. Okay.
He wasn't like beating up kids at school. He wasn't showing normal signs of aggression. So I don't know. When Lyle was 11, though, she made him go to bed with her. When he was in bed with her, she forced him to sexually touch her everywhere. Not just like upper, but lower too.
Upper's bad enough at that.
Jose was often in the bed with them too. He wasn't doing anything at that point. Like he had stopped abusing Lyle at that point. But he was just in bed with him while Lyle was touching Kitty.
And Jose was probably like, this is fine.
Oh yeah, I guarantee he didn't think twice about it. But this lasted until Lyle was 13 years old. For Erik, she would conduct penis checks. She would make Erik drop his pants and she would examine his penis, allegedly looking for signs of AIDS.
That's not how that works.
We know you cannot detect AIDS from a visual examination. She knew about Jose and Eric's sexual relationship. So
I hate that you even have to call it a sexual relationship because that's not what it was.
It's disgusting. It is. I think she wanted to make sure that Erik didn't catch anything because she also they both thought he was gay. She wanted to make sure Erik didn't catch anything that Jose could give to her. Also, Jose was cheating on her and she knew about that. So I think she thought if Jose got something from one of his mistresses, he would have given it to Erik, because I don't think they were having sex at this point. But she wanted to make sure Jose didn't have anything. So I think Kitty was trying to make sure that she didn't get AIDS from Jose or any other STD. And if she thought Erik was gay, that's where the AIDS came from, but
still doesn't make it okay.
No. Kitty would also walk around nude or semi-nude in front of the boys. She would ask them how she looked, seeking validation.
That isn't normal. Like,
no, walking around naked in front of your kids.
No, that's not normal.
No.
Like after okay, we'll give it after 2 years. Like, I don't feel like your kid should really be seeing you naked.
No,
like if you're not breastfeeding, why are they seeing you naked?
Right, and you know, a lot of parents take showers with their kids when they're little.
Yeah, like I've taken showers with Lorelai. Like we had to whenever we were at Disney because there wasn't a bathtub.
Right.
Like that is
a lot different than what we are talking about.
Right. This is her seeking validation from her children.
Yes. And they had to give it to her, or else she'd get angry with them. Outside of sexual abuse, Kitty was physically and verbally abusive as well. She would frequently hit the boys, chase them around the house, and pull Lyle's hair. During an argument...
Lyle barely had any hair to begin with. Why are we pulling on it?
Right.
Was it to pull against the screws? Then I'm sure...
Well, and this is before that. He was already losing hair.
Oh, and she's
pulling more out.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. During an argument, she once ripped off Lyle's hairpiece, though. No one knew about this hairpiece except him and his parents. So it was incredibly embarrassing for this to happen in front of Erik. Speaking of Erik, he would try his hardest to please his mother. He would cook and clean and do anything she wanted, but she would still find flaws in everything he did or scream at him if he didn't do it.
Can't win.
Both boys were not good in school. Their focus was on tennis, and for Lyle, that was fine. She didn't really care. But for Erik, Kitty didn't think that was acceptable.
Makes sense.
She would lock Erik in her bedroom closet for hours, sometimes 8 to 10 hours, while she left the house.
Why?
She would force him to do these tests, quote unquote tests, that she gave him, and would scold him for getting answers wrong. I think these were like college level tests, and he was a child. He was not allowed out of the closet for any reason at all. So when Erik had to use the bathroom, he did so in a Tupperware container.
What the hell?
She would put a piece of paper in the door so she would know if he left the closet.
Wow.
Lyle also had to use the bathroom in a Tupperware container that he kept under his bed. A relative found it once, and Lyle explained that he had that because he was too scared to leave his room at night. Kitty would also lock them out of the house. She refused to give them a key to her house, quote unquote. That's what she told them. But she usually didn't lock the doors. But when she would lock them, she would not let the boys in at night. She made them sleep outside.
Who does that to your kids?
Now, I think I've seen in TV shows where, curfew is 11. If you're not home, I'm locking the door.
Okay.
And then they usually let them in.
I was like,
right.
But who actually does that?
Right. But no, this was, I think they would come home in the early evening and she would have the door locked. Not even like an outrageous time at night, She would come to the door and say no. Lyle had an attachment to stuffed animals as well. He would give them different personalities and names, and he played with them regularly. In one of Kitty's fits of rage, she destroyed them and threw them out the window. This devastated Lyle.
Yeah, security.
He had
Probably what little security he felt like he had.
Well, he had a large collection of them, and this lasted until he was in his late teens. I think he was like 16 when this happened.
With all the abuse, I'm not surprised.
Right. He was heartbroken. But another thing about Lyle that is a clear sign of abuse is that Lyle wet the bed until he was a teenager. That is the textbook sign of sexual abuse.
Yeah.
Kitty was not about to help him with this issue and refused to wash his sheets when he did this. So he testified that he would just sleep on the floor those nights because he couldn't sleep in his bed. The sheets were soiled. And, I mean, he didn't know how to do laundry. They were rich kids, you know. They had a stay-at-home mom. She did all the laundry. They didn't probably know how to do laundry.
Right.
No. The boys did act out in their teen years.
As most teens do. Granted, if it's anything like Monster, they went a little above and beyond.
It is. They were robbing rich people's homes and pawning the items or keeping the cash, so they didn't have to ask their parents for money. Which acting out in that way is either A, you're so rich you need the thrill of it, or B, you're crying out for help. You're crying out for someone to like get you out of that situation.
Okay, but really for them it could have been either way.
It could have. When they were caught, Jose was furious. He had always taught the boys to lie, cheat, and steal, but never get caught.
And they got caught.
He was mad they got caught.
Not even that they did it, that they got caught.
Right. That is exactly right. But as a result, the boys had to see a therapist, and Jose told them he was cutting them out of the will. And then keep that in mind. Both boys were under the impression they were out of their parents' will. And just to be clear, this happened way before the murders, at least a year, I believe, that they were told they were out of the will. So it's not like he said, you're out of the will, and the next day they came and killed him before he could make changes.
Which that would make me think it was a greed thing.
Right.
But that's not how that happened.
Kitty was also very hateful towards her children with words. She would frequently scream at them, call them sociopaths, and generally degrade them. She would often tell them she hated them and that she wished she hadn't had them and that they ruined her life. Kitty had to give up a career to raise them, and she resented that. She would take them to the mall with her and leave them while she shopped until security would come and get them, and then they would spend hours in security until she decided she was done and came and got them. They'd page her, everything, and she would not come until she was done shopping. And she did this several times. Lyle estimated at least 15 times.
So it was pretty frequent.
Yes. Kitty knew about the sexual abuse that Jose was doing to their children. There is zero doubt about that. Anytime family would be staying with them, she told them that when Jose went into the bedroom or bathroom with either of the boys, they were not to go near that door or even in the hallway. That is witness testimony verified.
Like, not just from a drama.
Right.
That's from the testimonies.
Once when Lyle was 6, he went downstairs to the room his cousin was staying in. Lyle asked to sleep down there with her so his father wouldn't come into his room. When the cousin asked why his father would come into his room, Lyle told her that he was touching his penis. The cousin immediately went to Kitty, who laughed it off and told her that Lyle liked to tell lies. That was also testified to at the trial. Erik also confided in his cousin Andy about the abuse. Both Erik and Lyle thought this was normal. So he was just talking to Andy like, hey, does your dad touch your penis? Yeah. Also witness verified.
That's crazy.
So Kitty was not an unwilling participant in the sexual abuse. She knew about it and didn't stop it.
And partook in her own.
Right. She did her own sexual abusing. Because I consider those penis checks sexual abuse. I mean, there's no other way that I see it that she did with Erik. She didn't touch him, but she still humiliated him. Yeah. And there was a sexual component to it.
Yeah. And whenever she'd have Lyle get in bed with her.
Right.
Like, she was not an innocent bystander.
No. And I think it's very weird that we talk about all the stuff Jose does, like the media and everything. But no one mentions that. I had to watch the testimony to figure out.
To even hear about that.
Right. What sexual abuse Kitty did other than the penis checks. Because I had heard that Lyle accused her of sexual abuse too. But nobody talked about why. Like what happened. So I just think that's very weird that we're not talking about what she did. And I also...
She's definitely portrayed as more of a, yes, she knew and that's bad. She did nothing to stop it. But that's really it.
Right.
And the verbal abuse.
And honestly, even if that was all she did, was just didn't stop it,
I mean,
I still think that she is a terrible person.
Oh, absolutely. But I'm just saying, like...
Right.
It's not common knowledge that it was more than that.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just saying that by itself is enough for me to say, why didn't you protect your children? She even helped Jose do it by ensuring that no one found out, by keeping people out of the hallway.
Or by Lyle tells lies.
Right. She helped him. And this is evidenced by a note from her therapist where she told him what she was hiding was a sick and embarrassing secret about her family. I don't see how that could be interpreted any other way. I mean, a sick and embarrassing secret about her family. I mean, it could have been at the time that, she thought Erik was gay. I don't think that would be that traumatic to where her therapist would say that, Yeah. I don't know.
Could be Jose's mistresses, but I have a feeling it's Jose's proclivities instead.
If she would have just said embarrassing, I can think of all these other things it would be. But sick and embarrassing?
Yeah.
Because what they're doing is sick. I mean...
It's disgusting. It's unforgivable.
Yeah. Jose always told Erik that if he ever told anyone about the abuse, especially Lyle, that he would kill him and Lyle.
Which is crazy to me considering he did it to Lyle too.
And I think Lyle was given the same threat, like if you tell anyone I'll kill you.
Yeah.
But his only happened for, not downplaying it, his happened for 2 years versus 12.
Yes, like abuse is abuse, no longer how long it takes. But it's also impacts you differently.
There was no way that Jose wanted this to go public.
No.
When Lyle was 13, he figured out that Jose was abusing Erik by sounds he was hearing outside of Erik's bedroom. Lyle confronted Jose and told him to stop touching his brother. Jose told him that he would and to keep it a secret, but he really didn't stop.
But Lyle thought up until... like much later that he had stopped.
Yes.
Right?
At that point, Erik believed him, or Lyle believed him that Jose stopped. After the incident where Kitty tore off Lyle's wig, when Lyle was 21 and Erik was 18, Erik confided in Lyle and told him about the sex with his father. The quote unquote sex.
So at 11, Lyle thought it had stopped.
At 13, yes.
Oh, 13,
and then 21 learned that it didn't. Lyle was very upset that this was still happening.
I am sure that is just pure anger.
He decided to confront Jose again. And I don't believe Erik told Lyle that Jose threatened to kill them until later.
Okay.
So that's why Lyle went ahead and confronted Jose.
Because he didn't know about the death threat at that point.
Yes.
Okay.
When he did confront Jose, Jose told Lyle that the boys made their choice and now Jose had to make his.
What does that even mean?
Lyle threatened to go public if he wouldn't, but said he wouldn't if Jose stopped. And Jose just told Lyle that Erik was his son and he'll do whatever he wants with him. So this put the boys on edge. They 100% believed their father would kill them. Because obviously Erik told Lyle about this after he confronted him.
You've made your choice, now I have to make mine. What else is that supposed to mean?
Right. And knowing, one, about the threats he's already made to kill them. And about how concerned he is with this public image.
And knowing all of the physical abuse, verbal abuse. Because people have corroborated that.
Right.
Right? Like in the testimony.
And the sexual abuse. People have corroborated them telling telling family members about it. And about not going down the hallways.
Right. Public opinion wise, not everybody believes the sexual abuse. Which is ridiculous because it is clearly. Anyways, we won't get into that just yet. But nobody questions whether they were physically or verbally abused.
Right. There were so many witnesses to that.
Right. So what else are you supposed to think? That eventually has to escalate somewhere.
Exactly. They didn't doubt that their mother would help kill them either.
Which is sad.
Because she told them that she hated them and that she wished that they had never been born and that they ruined her life.
And that she backed up everything Jose did.
Yeah.
And participated.
She had actually threatened to kill them before, actually.
Oh, of course she did.
She threatened to poison the whole family's food. She was so believable that if Jose suspected there might be poison in something, he would take the boys out for dinner and refuse to eat the food she made. So, and I think in Monsters this is talked about, but it's just with the boys while Jose is away. But no, this was while Jose was there. She told him that she would poison all their food. And he believed her. And that should tell you something. If Jose believes her, then it could have happened. She could have actually done it.
Right.
So the boys were convinced that their parents were now going to kill them.
They just didn't know when.
Jose had made remarks that reinforced that idea too. For example, Lyle testified that he tried to talk to him about a tennis camp after this confrontation. And Jose just said, "What's the point?" And Lyle took that to mean, "What's the point? You're going to be dead. You're not going to be a tennis star."
How else was he supposed to take it?
Right.
I mean, I guess he could have taken it as, "What's the point? I'm going to be in jail. I can't afford it anymore."
Or, "What's the point? I've decided you're not playing tennis anymore." It could have went other ways. But given that scenario, that situation, I understand why he took it that way.
Me too.
Kitty also loved guns. She had several rifles and even took Erik with her to buy a rifle. When she was buying it, she told Erik that she was going to use it to kill someone.
And why wouldn't they think that it was going to be them?
Right. And at the time, Erik didn't think it was them. He thought maybe it was one of Jose's mistresses.
Oh, okay.
Because this is before.
Oh, this is before all this. I thought you meant they went
But now they're
together
rethinking about that after the confrontation. And now it seems like she could use it to kill them. So Lyle and Erik decided that they need to be prepared for when their parents attacked. They wanted to arm themselves with handguns. When they went to buy the handguns, they discovered it was a 15-day waiting period before they could physically get them. And since they believed they were in immediate danger, this wasn't going to work. And this was a couple of weeks before the murders happened, which gets them in trouble later because you can argue premeditation.
Yeah.
They weren't planning to buy them to kill their parents with. They were buying them in the event that their parents attacked them, they could fight back.
It does not look that way, though.
It doesn't. That's what they're saying. That is why
But
they
they're
bought
saying
them.
it's for protection, for if something would occur.
Yes. They told the gun shop employee that they were looking for home protection, so they recommended a shotgun. When they tried to purchase the gun, the shop needed 2 forms of ID. They didn't have this as Lyle had his license suspended He had a lot of speeding tickets. And all Erik had was a fake ID. So they went to a different store and they only needed one form of ID. So Erik used his fake. Erik had 2 fake IDs, actually, side note. One was Lyle's roommate from Princeton.
Yeah.
And Jose decided that Erik was no longer allowed to be friends with that person. They had to move him out, convinced he was a con artist. And when they were cleaning out Lyle's apartment, Erik found this ID, kind of looked like him, so he kept it.
So it wasn't even really a fake ID. It was somebody else's ID that he was going to use for himself.
The other one, Kitty actually told Erik how to get. He bought a fake birth certificate, and Kitty said, okay, so you're going to take that birth certificate down to the DMV, and you're going to get an ID with it. So I just think that's strange.
Purpose?
Yeah, why would you help your kid get a fake ID? Whatever. I never had a fake ID, so I don't know.
No.
At the store...
I was out getting drunk in a field like everyone else.
Right. At this gun store, Lyle purchased ammo, birdshot ammo. The employee told him that he would be better off to get buckshot to use for home protection, so he decided to purchase that too. And the difference was the strength behind the bullets. I mean, birdshot would kill a bird. Buckshot would kill a deer, you know. So it was better to stop a home intruder than the birdshot.
Birdshot, someone might still be walking.
Yeah. The boys kept the guns in their rooms, and Lyle lived in the guest house at this point, so his was back in the guest house. Erik's was in his room in the main house. The ammo was in Erik's car, in the trunk. Lyle and Erik thought they knew when their parents were going to kill them. On August 19th, 1989, Jose and Kitty had planned a shark fishing trip for the family. This trip was originally scheduled for the morning, but got changed to 4 p.m. This made the boys really nervous, being on a boat in the ocean in the evening. Well, most people go shark fishing earlier in the day. They believed that their parents were going to throw them overboard so that they could say it was an accident. The boys drove around all day trying to get home late so their parents would leave without them. Which, my question is, why didn't you stay out till like 6 o'clock? You know, like, why did you come home?
Yeah.
Right. Jose and Kitty were waiting for them when they got home, and they were waiting on them to go to the boat. Much to their surprise, the boat captain and his crew accompanied them on this trip, so there was no murder that day. The next day, August 20th, 1989, the boys were on edge all day. They decided that they would go to a movie that evening. Because they thought they knew that their parents were going to kill them the day before. And now that they didn't know what to expect.
Now they're just up in arms.
Right. Lyle was actually supposed to meet a friend to see Batman that night anyway. He had already seen it, but his friend hadn't, so he was going to go to accompany him. Lyle invited Erik to come too, and they walked down the stairs to find their mother, waiting in the foyer area. She told them they couldn't go out that evening, which was unusual. They usually just went out in the evenings whenever they wanted. They weren't super strict on that.
I mean, and they're adults, so...
Right. Lyle and Kitty got into a huge fight when she told him they couldn't go. And in Lyle's mind, he's thinking, oh God, they don't want us to leave because they're going to do it tonight.
Right. What else are you supposed to think?
She told Lyle that he ruined the family and that she had always known what was going on between them and Jose. That crushed both of the boys.
Yeah, I mean...
That their mother knew and didn't stop it from happening.
I mean, they had to have known she knew before that. Or at least suspected. But to hear it come out of the horse's mouth, I'm sure was just...
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Jose came out of the den and told them they were not allowed to leave. And told Erik to get up to his room because he would be there in a minute.
Oh, no.
Lyle told him not to go and told Jose that he wasn't touching his brother again. Jose and Kitty retreated to the den and closed the doors. Erik and Lyle were scared. They didn't know if their parents had guns in the den, and they went in there to get them. But they assumed they did because of how that interaction just went.
I'm
and
not sure
all
what
of
I
the
would
other
think.
behavior leading up to this.
Even if it was just that, and I wasn't normally told I couldn't leave, and like I'm not sure what else. What else are you supposed to think?
Right. They assumed that they had guns in there and that they were about to kill them.
And it's Kitty, so really, is that a horrible assumption?
Right. They claimed they didn't know where the guns were kept. So they both went and grabbed their shotguns. They met at the car and they loaded their guns. Erik and Lyle went into the den where their parents were watching TV and eating ice cream and began shooting them. I believe they were actually watching Law and Crime or something like that, like an older law show, TV show, true crime show.
Like Law and Order?
No,
I mean, like
something similar, yeah. Or like Dateline, like one of the truer ones. 13 shots were fired, 6 from Erik's gun and 7 from Lyle's. Jose was nearly decapitated as Lyle placed his weapon at the crown of his head and fired. Kitty was shot in her hand, chest, arm, leg, and finally her head after Lyle reloaded. So Kitty was still alive and Lyle reloaded to kill her. She would have died from her injuries, I'm sure.
But they wanted to be sure.
Yes. And that is another big point, that Lyle reloaded. It's always a big thing if you've discharged between the two of them 12 bullets and you have to reload, or you reload. That just shows the anger and aggression behind it. They chose the original store where they were going to buy handguns because there was a shooting range across the street. Like, it was advertised like that in the phone book.
So they could practice.
They wanted to practice, but they couldn't because they couldn't get handguns and you couldn't practice shooting with shotguns.
Because they didn't think that they were safe enough to wait the 2-week
the 15
period.
days. Yeah. So they had never shot a gun before.
Have you ever shot a shotgun?
I have. Yes, I have.
So that would make sense because like the first time you shoot a shotgun, it like the
it's your
kickback is awful. So if you're not expecting that and you don't know enough about it to like brace yourself for that, I could see that.
Yeah. Both boys were distraught after they realized what they did. They waited for the police to come, assuming that a neighbor heard the shots and called 911, but they never came. After waiting for a couple of hours, they decided they needed to pick up the shotgun shells and get rid of the bloody clothing and hide the weapons.
So, like, I knew that there was a waiting period before the police got there, but
like in Monsters, it shows them just quickly cleaning up and getting out of there.
So they just
didn't happen. They waited for 2 hours
just for police to show up.
Yes.
That they didn't think they would have to call it. Like they were already ready to go to jail for that.
Yeah, they were waiting.
So if the police had just been called and gotten there 2 hours earlier, I mean, we'd probably be still having the same discussion today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like they would be in prison. I almost guarantee it. But
I think how they reacted after played a lot of the jury's decision.
Yeah.
So we could have had a different outcome. But I think it's important to know that they waited for 2 hours. They could have thought of an alibi. They say that they weren't really talking about an alibi during those hours. It was when they realized, okay, the police aren't coming. What are we going to do? So,
like, what's our plan B here?
Yes.
But also, you're in Beverly Hills.
How does no one call the cops?
Right. Like
that's like the ultimate bystander effect.
Like 12 shots were just fired. It's fine.
Yeah.
Must have been the wind.
So, and I think it shows. I think they're portrayed as they already knew what they were going to do. They knew they were going to go get an alibi. That wasn't the case. They were too late for the Batman movie. Because like I said, they were already planning to go to the Batman movie because Lyle's friend was meeting them there. But they were too late for it. But they still tried to get a ticket as their alibi.
And they'd already seen it, so.
Yes. So they could tell the police what happened if they were asked. But the employee would not sell them a ticket because they were more than 15 minutes late. They bought one for a later showing of a different movie that they had already seen, but it didn't really matter because it wouldn't be worth using as proof of where they were when the police asked.
They probably just didn't want to look like an idiot at the ticket counter.
Right. After driving around for a while, they returned to the house. Lyle called 911 and was distraught. He told the dispatcher that someone killed his parents. Erik's mental state was collapsing. They figured out what to tell the police and decided to tell them that it must have been someone his dad was in business with. The popular story is that he blamed the mob or mafia, but Lyle claims he just said his father was dealing with some shady people in the business.
So maybe alluding to the mafia or mob, but he never said that?
Yes.
Okay.
And in interviews later, he had said he didn't think it was the mafia or the mob. And he was like, when he was asked about that during his testimony, he said, well, yeah, I didn't want them to think that I was complying with the police and I was trying to blame them for something and then them come after me. So I get that because it's the mob.
Yeah.
Both boys were questioned by the police, with Erik talking first. Lyle wanted Erik to talk, so if Erik ended up confessing, he would too, because Erik was, like I said, his mental state was collapsing. But
So Lyle's like, I'm not going to confess unless you confess
Yes.
that I'm not going to make you look like an idiot.
Yes. Both stuck to their story that it must have been someone Jose had worked with. Now remember, Jose told them that they were cut out of the will. So Erik and Lyle were not expecting an inheritance. They were shocked when no new will could be found. There wasn't one in Jose's safe, although Lyle was the first person to open the safe and said there wasn't one in there. Some think there was, and Lyle destroyed it. Lyle denies this. There was also speculation that the new will might have been on the computer. Jose's cousin was the executor of the estate, but he allowed the family to participate in decisions that needed to be made. It wasn't a one-man show.
Which tells you he's a good executor. Like,
Yes.
like that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to just be the organizer.
One family member insisted that he hire someone to check out the computer. Lyle was suspicious of this family member and thought that he would plant a will or change it to where he inherited the money because he was not happy that Erik and Lyle were getting all this money.
Why wouldn't you want the children, I mean, not knowing what they did, why wouldn't that not be your first thing? Like, the kids are going to get the money.
Yeah. So with the executor's awareness, Lyle had the computer looked at first. When nothing was found, he asked the person he had looked at it to wipe the computer. Lyle stated that he did this so he would know that if the cousin found something, it would be fake. That's what he testified to.
Okay.
And the cousin didn't find anything. And that's a big deal at their trial.
Wiping the computer.
Yes.
That gives all the red flags.
So now the boys inherited $14.5 million between all the assets. Their mental state was still in shambles, especially Erik. Erik was having nightmares of his parents. He was suicidal and hallucinating. And I tell you this to understand the state of mind he was in the months following his parents' deaths. There were 2 funerals for the Menendezes, one in LA, thrown by RCA, and one thrown in Princeton for their family. Fun fact, Milli Vanilli was played at the funeral in LA because Jose loved them, but Erik did not specifically dedicate the Girl I'm Gonna Miss You song to his mother.
Well, that was good.
We'll clear that up.
Funny scene, though. Like, one of my top favorites.
Although they were now multimillionaires, the estate controlled the money. So they had to ask their uncles or their uncle's wife, their aunt, permission before they spent any money.
Wait, so the shopping spree everybody is like tripping about, not now, but I mean kind of now, had to be approved before they could even do all that? So like the 3 Rolexes, they had to get permission to... Huh. That makes that a little bit different. For me anyways.
Yes. He told them to go get suits for the funerals, so they did. While waiting for the suits to be tailored, they just walked around the mall and ended up purchasing Rolexes. They called, I believe it was their uncle that they called and asked before they bought them. And he said yes. I mean, they had to get permission for everything that they spent. Any large purchase that they spent. I'm sure day to day they didn't have to, like if they went through a drive-through, they didn't have to ask permission. But the larger items, they had to get permission for. The boys ended up buying new cars. Lyle got a Porsche and Erik got a Jeep Wrangler. They also tried to buy condos in Princeton as they were trying to get Erik into school there. But those never went through. The deals fell through. Lyle also purchased a restaurant with a friend, and that restaurant is no longer in business. But none of this was done without their aunt or uncle's permission. By Halloween that year, Erik was still mentally unstable. He was really contemplating suicide. So he decided to call his old therapist, Dr. Oziel. This was a huge mistake that Erik made. Not for seeking help, but for seeking help from Dr. Oziel. But he didn't know that at the time. Erik told Dr. Oziel that they murdered their parents. Now Dr. Oziel, he was a rather unsavory character. He had slept with several of his patients. He was involved in other businesses, and he actually traded therapy for construction work on his home, which is a conflict of interest. After Erik confessed to the murders, Dr. Oziel called Lyle down to the office. Lyle was not happy that Erik told someone, but he did, so Lyle went in to his office to figure out what was happening. Dr. Oziel also called his side piece, Judalon Smith. Judalon is also not the most stable person, but whatever. She's kind of funny. He told her that Erik confessed and that she needed to come to his office in case the brothers killed him. She did, and she heard yelling in his office, but they didn't kill Dr. Oziel. She couldn't even hear that they threatened him. Both Erik and Lyle were questioning privacy and making sure they weren't being recorded. Well, Dr. Oziel lied to them and told them that nothing was being recorded when in all actuality he was recording his notes. He kept them in 3 different safety deposit boxes and told them this. He said that was in case anything happened to him. He also asked the boys to go into business with him since they just had so much money.
That's weird.
That is a shady, shady person. Dr. Oziel ended up breaking up with Judalon, which she was not happy about. She went to the police and reported him for his inappropriate behavior and told them about the brother's confession and that he had it taped.
Judalon, you dirty.
This is what led to the brothers' capture. On March 8th, 1990, Lyle was arrested outside of his home. Erik was actually in Israel for a tennis tournament and turned himself in 3 days later upon returning to LA.
Why would you come home?
I know, I would have ran away. Like, you had all this money.
Like, did his lawyer actually tell him to come?
I think his lawyer
home?
did. I would assume so.
You got this money, man. Go. Peace.
Yeah. The general theory, the state's theory, was that they killed their parents for money. In fact, this was actually brought in front of a grand jury, and the grand jury did not indict with that reasoning. They did not find that a murder of this severity
was just about greed.
Was about money. And they refused to indict. And I think they had to go back again and try a different reasoning, but they presented the money, the greed at trial. The brothers' family hired Robert Shapiro to represent them, but he was fired when he just wanted them to take a plea deal. It was kind of what Robert Shapiro was known for, was plea deals. But this is when they hired Leslie Abramson. Leslie was a pistol. She was ruthless. She hired a therapist to talk to Erik, and he confessed the abuse to this therapist. This was the first time Erik shared the abuse with anyone outside of his family.
Because they didn't tell Oziel that, right?
No.
They didn't go into that with
and
Oziel.
They didn't talk to Oziel about anything relating to the murders, what happened, anything, because they didn't want to talk about the why. So
basically just this happened.
Oziel kept pushing for details, but they wouldn't talk about them.
Which is probably good for them.
Yeah. But it may have also hurt them because
if
that's when people say, well, why didn't you say anything earlier?
That's true.
When Leslie found out about the abuse, this is what she needed. This was their defense, imperfect self-defense. Self-defense is when a reasonable person would fight back and that could result in death. Imperfect self-defense is when a reasonable person would not have taken that action, but the person who did really believed they were in danger. Now, on the outside, we can say, go to the police, tell an authority figure, run away. Well, they didn't see those as options.
If literally any of what was said about Jose in the trial is true, I can absolutely see why you wouldn't want to run to the police.
Exactly. They knew if they went to the police or told anyone else, Jose would just kill him.
Yeah.
Jose wasn't afraid of the police. He was afraid of public perception. Once Jose was driving Lyle to a tennis match and he was speeding. He got pulled over and was rude to the police officer, just demanding a ticket so he could go. Well, the cop took longer than Jose wanted, so he was angry. He decided to drive what Lyle said was about 5 miles per hour the entire rest of their drive, with the cop following him. So Jose was not worried about the cops. He was worried about the public image. As far as running away, they knew Jose would find them wherever they went. Erik tried running away when he was a child, but Jose would find him and bring him home.
Didn't Erik just run to the neighbors or a family member?
No, he ran a few blocks away. And there were several different times.
Okay, so it wasn't just to the family members or whatever that I read about. Okay.
So in their mind, this was their only way out. And that was the only way that Erik wasn't going to get raped by his dad that night.
I mean, because Jose had already told him, Erik, meet me in...
I'll be in your room in a minute. Yep.
And they know what that means.
Exactly. Absolutely.
If he was just going to punch him in the face, he would have done it right there.
He didn't care about that.
Right.
Their case went to trial 3 years after their arrest. Erik and Lyle were both in the LA County Jail, but they were not on the same unit or cell block.
So that was totally traumatized.
Yes. And there also was no escape plan.
Ever?
I don't believe so.
We talked about it twice.
Now, Lyle did write a letter to Erik, but it said, nobody knows the secrets of our family except us. We can't I don't want to disclose this. I don't know if he said this then or if this was in the trial, but he said, if we talk about this, it's like killing our father all over again. Because even though they have all this, they say several times that they wish they never killed them. They say that they wish they could take it back because of how they feel afterwards. Because they did love their parents, and that's the case with a lot of abuse victims. They love their parents.
It takes a lot to cut a parent out of your life,
It does.
let alone cut a parent out in the way that they did.
Yeah, to be clear, I didn't do that. But yeah, it is. It's very hard. Erik and Lyle had separate juries, so not all jurors heard the same cases. Some details that only pertain to Erik's case, only Erik's jury heard, and vice versa.
That seems weird. Wouldn't it be easier to just do it all at once?
Well, because some things didn't pertain to Erik and some didn't pertain to Lyle, different pieces of background and abuse didn't apply to everything. When I was watching, they asked the jury to leave for part of Lyle. They asked the jury to leave for part of Erik's. So that way there wasn't, and I think maybe some of it was limiting confusion too, in my opinion.
That makes sense.
And
it is really easy to get confused with
is.
the details.
And Leslie was only representing Erik. Lyle had his own separate attorney.
Which was required, right? By
yes,
law,
they had to have their own. Yeah. The defense had over 50 witnesses, including family, that testified to the boys telling them about the abuse, experts that testified to their mental state, and character witnesses to testify to the boys' character. Not one person testified that Jose and Kitty were good people.
In either trial?
In the first trial.
Okay.
I watched several body language experts examine Erik and Lyle's testimony from this first trial. And I wanted to do that because that was the big thing for me. I needed to see them tell it to be convinced. And I really appreciate that the ones that I watched anyway, looked at behavior when they weren't talking, when they were just talking about like, regular things like, where did you live during this, when you were this old, like things that they wouldn't lie about. There's like no reason to lie. Basically. Yeah, exactly. And seeing how they reacted. And then whenever you got to talk about the sexual abuse and the physical abuse, seeing how they changed, seeing the involuntary movements, like they raise their eyebrows, bite their lip, look down, and explaining what all that meant. I highly recommend you look at some of these because they're really informative. And all of them that I watched, at least, have said either, yes, they're being 100% genuine, or this is a act that could be seen as deceit or shame. Either one. Because there's some different forms of body language that can either be aggression or deceit or like,
Yeah, but unfortunately when it's deceit or shame, yes, that's a fine line. But I'm sure like the looking down, the looking away, like that could be either.
Yeah. And they compared it to the control. So, okay, this is consistent when he's talking about something he's uncomfortable with that isn't related to this, Yeah. So if he's having the same reaction, it tells me he's being genuine. Everyone that I watched anyway came to the conclusion that they were being genuine. But they did also say you could see it both ways, but given their past, their history during this testimony, I believe them. The state alleged that the boys were lying about the abuse. They claimed that they just wanted their money and that they were just spoiled brats. This was an important trial. It was the first trial shown on court TV.
Not televised, but shown on court TV, right?
It was on TV. I don't know if it was. Dave says it's not live.
I know.
I don't know. I wasn't around. I don't know if it was live on court TV, but court TV did record it and they put it on TV.
This is when the whole media circus with crime and courtrooms and stuff really was taking off.
And it was before OJ, which is thought to be the first big court TV case. It's not. This is. So there were cameras in the courtroom for the first time. I personally like this. I think it adds accountability to everyone in that room. The judge knows that if he makes an unfair decision, the whole country can see it. It's not limited to that room. Same with if the witnesses lie, the whole country sees it. Either one of the attorneys act a certain way, your reputation is on the line there. And Leslie Abramson she's badass. Like, if I was a lawyer, I'd want to be her. And she was not just mean to like the state. She was like tough on Erik when she was examining him. So I liked her. If I needed a defense attorney, that'd be who I'd call.
When she was one of the top criminal defense attorneys in the area, right? I thought I saw that. She just reminds me of my Aunt Irene because of the real tight perm of that era. My Aunt Irene rocked that till she was gone.
After several weeks of deliberation, both juries were deadlocked. Now they weren't deciding between innocent and guilty. The boys admitted that they did it. They were deciding between first-degree murder and manslaughter. First-degree murder had two sentencing options: life in prison without the possibility of parole or death. Manslaughter was much lighter, and it's estimated they would have received about 25 years in prison. This was a very violent murder. They were not going to get off with no prison time. There's just no way.
And I'm not going to put any of the photos from the murders because they are gruesome. They are morbid. If you want to see them, they are all over the internet.
Right. But there are some people that think that they should have never went to prison in the first place.
I don't know if I go that far.
I agree. I think they needed help, mental help. They actually had a psychiatrist
That wasn't
testify.
Dr. Oziel.
No. They had a therapist or a psychiatrist testify at the trial, estimating that their mental ages were 8 and 10. And like I said, I think Eric
Then
was
tell me they weren't
21
abused.
at the time.
Yeah, I was like, then tell me they weren't abused. Because that is another telltale sign of prolonged physical, verbal, and
Yes.
sexual abuse.
Yes. So, and that to me means that they should have voted for manslaughter because they were not thinking like rational adults. They didn't have that mentality. Since the jury could not come to a unanimous decision, the judge declared a mistrial. And I think it's important to note that the juries were majority female in this trial, and the men were the ones voting for first-degree murder. And I think that's important because at that time, we didn't, as a society, believe that boys could be sexually abused. They didn't have the right parts, is what was said. And they especially weren't abused in wealthy families by their dad. So the men did not believe them. After the mistrial, there was another famous murder case hitting the newsstands. Remember O.J. Simpson and his murder trial for killing his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson? Yep, that happened at the time. O.J. was in the same block as at the L.A. County Jail as Erik, and Erik really did try to give him advice about his lawyer and to take a plea deal. After O.J. was acquitted, there was a lot of pressure for the DA to get tough on crime. Not only was O.J. during this time, but so was the Rodney King getting beat up by the police and the being videotaped and
it was
shown
like
everywhere.
Super brutal. Like, it was absolutely excessive force.
And the police officers got off scot-free. So there were already like riots in the city. So now the DA had the Menendez mistrial, the OJ acquittal, and the acquitted police officers.
They look super incompetent.
They were not about to lose another Menendez trial.
Which is crazy to me. Like, I know that that's, unfortunately, that's just how it is. And there's nothing we can do to change it. But that is crazy.
It is. It's absolutely insane.
That they then take it out on people.
Their
Because they're incompetent.
Their second trial was only 3 weeks after OJ's trial ended. So the heat was still there.
Yeah, so they're still mad.
The judge changed the rules for this trial.
Of course he did, because he needed it to fit his narrative. I don't even know what you're about to tell me, but I'm already pissed.
There was only one jury, majority male this time.
Naturally.
No cameras allowed. And no evidence presented that defended the sexual abuse.
Why?
I have no idea. None. Now, there was an issue that came out after the first trial where Leslie asked the initial therapist that talked to Erik in prison, she asked him to exclude some parts of his findings. So that's evidence tampering or something like that. So she was under a lot of heat afterwards for that. And I don't know if that played a small part. I don't think that's the entire reason. If that was, you exclude that piece of evidence.
Yeah.
But then I think the state could argue that, okay, well, that's where you got this claim from. If that's excluded, you have to exclude everything else. I don't know if that's how that works.
Okay. Was this before or after the Lyle's book? And
yeah, I'm going to talk
we're
about
gonna
that
get
too.
it? Okay.
But no witnesses. All that they had was Erik's testimony. So Lyle could not testify. He had a new friend that he was talking to in jail, and she was supposedly helping him write a book.
Pen pals or like the phone calls?
Phones.
Yeah.
She was actually taping their phone calls and writing her own book.
So that part was true. In
Yes.
Monsters.
Lyle told her literally everything. He also said some self-incriminating things on those calls to the effect of he knows how to work a jury and he knows how convincing he is.
I was really hoping that part was dramatized. Lyle actually did all that.
And I think some of it was dramatized to make him look like a sociopath because that was
The angle of that episode.
Yeah, and that was the angle the media took, was that he was a sociopath.
But you gotta think, is it him bragging to a girl because
That's what I
talking
think
to a
it
female
is.
after being in jail this long? I'm not saying that it's okay or that he should have done that.
No.
He obviously hurt himself more than anyone else.
Absolutely. Because if he would have went up on the stand, he could have been cross-examined about that book.
Oh, yeah.
And they would have. Or about those recordings.
Mm-hmm.
So I absolutely think it was because he was bragging. He was trying to impress a girl. I don't know. So his lawyers didn't allow him to testify at the second trial. And as it turns out, Erik's testimony was not enough to convince the jury. The jury decided on first-degree murder.
Was Erik's... I forgot to ask this earlier. Sorry, we've talked about it a lot. Was Erik's testimony as bad in the first trial as they portrayed it in Monster?
Yes.
Like, to where he's, like, messing with the mic, super uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
He was messing with the mic
cringy.
a lot. Yeah.
Because that was hard to watch, and I was watching the drama. I was like, oh, gosh, stop moving.
And I'm taking that as, like, he's really nervous. He doesn't want to talk about this. Like, that kind of nervous. But others can see it as, oh, he's nervous because he's lying on the stand.
See, I didn't take it that way, either of those ways, really. Whenever I was watching the drama, not the testimonies, I was like, homeboy is an actor, and he's all excited because there's a microphone in front of his face. That's why he wants to get so close to it. But nerves makes more sense. But when I was watching it, I'm like, damn kid, back up.
Yeah, and I didn't even talk about that. I forgot that, actually. One of the pieces of evidence that the state used was a play that Erik and his friend had written out about a boy killing his parents.
Did they actually call it Friends?
It is really called Friends.
Oh my gosh.
And it was a really big deal that no one would actually watch a show called Friends or watch a play called Friends.
Which is hilarious now.
Yeah, here we are. But Kitty did help him write it, like type it out. So,
Which is wild.
yeah. Yeah. So the jury, they decided on first-degree murder. Not having the witnesses, only having Erik's testimony.
They didn't have any reason not to.
And I don't know if they were even allowed to show the nude pictures.
Probably not, because it's associated with the sexual abuse.
Yeah, they were very, very limited on what they could present.
So they had decided those boys' fate before they even stepped foot in the courtroom.
Yes. I think this was a very unfair trial.
The second one, I agree with you.
I mean, you convinced 2 juries last time. I mean, you didn't really convince them. Nobody could sway the jury last time. So you're telling me 2 juries couldn't decide when they had all of the facts. And then 1 jury decides when they don't have all of the facts. And that's fair? I don't think so.
Yeah. I was assuming that the way, like, in Monsters, like, when they were showing that trial and how, like, Leslie couldn't object anything, which I'm sure it's drama, but I just assumed that's all that was. I didn't realize, like, they literally wouldn't let them do anything.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And Erik's obviously not the best testifier.
One of the most powerful things I think Leslie said, and I don't know if she said this in the second trial, but I've heard her, like I've watched the part where she says it in the first, is that if their names were Erica, or if his name was Erika Menendez, we wouldn't be having this discussion. You would already be choosing manslaughter.
Which is very accurate. And it's still that way today.
Yeah, and I think she said, if my client's name was Erica, if it matters to you if it would matter to you if my client's name was Erica, then it shouldn't. And that's absolutely right. It should not matter but I 100% think it does.
Yeah.
Thankfully, the jury voted against the death penalty. So in July of 1996, Erik and Lyle Menendez were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The brothers were sent to separate prisons. In 2018, they were finally reunited when Erik was transferred to the same prison as Lyle, and they were even on the same unit.
Oh, that's interesting.
They burst into tears when they saw each other, as they had been separated for 22 years. Which I think my math might be a little wrong. No, it might be right. I don't know. They hadn't seen each other since
For
the
20
trial.
years.
Yeah, and they were in prison for 6 years before that, so that's where the 30 plus years, right? My brain was not computing.
You're fine.
Since being incarcerated, Erik and Lyle have actually thrived. They actually said when they were first arrested that they preferred jail to living with their parents. If that doesn't say anything. But they haven't gotten into a lot of trouble. They did have some fights, and Erik has had 2 serious rules violations. I believe those were both for cell phones. He had cell phones smuggled in. Other than that, they have both had good behavior and do well at their jobs in prison, and have even taken college classes. Lyle actually graduated recently.
Doesn't one have a degree now?
Yeah, he has a bachelor's degree from the University of California. He was one of the first prison graduates from this special program that they started. They both live in a non-designated programming facility that allows them more freedom, rehabilitative and educational programming, yoga classes, art classes, and groups such as anger management and Alcoholics Anonymous. Lyle has worked with the terminally ill inmates and helps inmates who have suffered from sexual abuse. He teaches religion classes, paints, and works on prison reform. Erik has similar hobbies and both love painting together. They're actually working on a mural project for the concrete walls in their unit. Both brothers are married currently, with Erik getting married in 1998 and Lyle getting married to a second wife in 2003. While Erik and Lyle have exhausted the appeals process, there's currently hope for their release. In May 2023, their attorneys filed a habeas petition asking for a new evidentiary hearing or to vacate their sentences. There is some new evidence that was not available at the time of the second trial that could have impacted the outcome.
Yeah, I saw this stuff come to light.
Yeah. The first is a letter that Erik wrote to his cousin Andy 8 months before the murders. This letter was found in a storage unit recently.
Okay, but also, Andy, why didn't you bring that with you when you testified?
True, and I don't know if he just didn't remember it.
Right.
Because his mom found it after he died.
And wasn't he a child whenever there was testifying and stuff?
I mean, I think he was, the same age as them, I think.
It was hard to tell if he even remembered the letter.
Right. This letter was found in a storage unit recently. He wrote, "It's still happening, Andy, but it's worse for me now. I can't explain it. He is so overweight that I can't stand to see him. I never know when it's going to happen, and it's driving me crazy. Every night I stay up thinking he might come in. I need to put it out of my mind. I know what you said before, but I'm afraid. You just don't know Dad like I do. He's crazy. He warned me 100 times about telling anyone, especially Lyle. Am I a serious wimpus? I don't know. I'll make it through this. I can handle it, Andy. I need to stop thinking about it." I personally believe, and I think at this point the DA's office has authenticated that letter. I personally believe that that is a good piece of evidence. Because that was what everybody was saying. There's no evidence to sexual abuse. Well, 1, there rarely is. And 2, there is. It wasn't allowed in the second trial. But this is one of those pieces of evidence.
Yeah, and if it's been authenticated by the DA, not that they don't have bias, but you know what I mean? If it's been shown that it's legit, it should absolutely be introduced.
Yeah. This letter proves that he had told someone else about the sexual abuse. It's not just witness testimony. Andy testified. But there's actual writing 8 months prior to the murder. There's also another...
Which means he still would have been 17 or 18 It's so wild to me that it lasted that long, that his dad had that big of a hold on him. Mm-hmm. And that his dad didn't get bored. And I don't mean that to be as crass as it sounds, but...
And I think one of the reasons a lot of people say, why didn't you fight back? Another reason to that is, yes, he physically probably could have overpowered his dad.
Oh, yeah. At that point,
he was in very good shape. They were athletes. But I don't think mentally he could have.
No, the fear, the degrading and everything that his dad was doing during.
Yeah. And I also think that goes back to the public perception of mental health.
Absolutely.
So there's also another victim of Jose Menendez, a member of the band Menudo. Menudo was, I think they're a Puerto Rican band, Cuban band. I can't remember exactly what country. But they were a band made of young boys. And when boys aged out, they replaced them with someone new. Or if they asked for more money, they replaced them. Ricky Martin was in that group.
Living la vida loca.
Yeah. So it was this member of Menudo named Roy Rosello has filed an affidavit swearing that Jose raped him. He claims that when he was about 13 or 14, Jose gave him alcohol and took him up to his bedroom. He passed out, and when he woke up, his anus was painful and bleeding. Some allege that Jose would do this with all the new members of Menudo.
No wonder Jose wanted that band to be, like, right under his thumb.
Exactly. This is extremely important to the case, as it shows there were more victims, and it adds credibility to the brothers' claims.
Yeah. And it's outside of the family, but it still shows that that's who Jose is.
The Los Angeles County DA announced a new hearing is set for November 29th of this year. This is where he will recommend either a new trial or resentencing. And I actually read, I think yesterday, that a couple days ago, he said he'll have a decision within 10 days on what he's going to recommend. So we'll know what the DA's stance is. A new trial is not likely because it will cost millions of dollars for a trial like this. It is more likely that the DA will recommend a resentencing, which would most likely be time served, because had they been convicted of manslaughter, they would have been out around 10 years ago, not including good behavior.
Right.
So they really should not have to stay in any longer if the judge, because it's not up to the DA to let them out. It has to go to court, and a judge has to make that decision.
My computer's about to die.
Okay. I'm almost done.
Okay.
A judge has to make that decision. So
So you have to convince one man.
Yes. But if the DA is agreeing to it, I don't see why the judge wouldn't.
Right.
The family was in LA this past week to provide their thoughts to the DA under Marcy's Law, which requires the victim's family to have a voice. Since they are also the perpetrator's family, they're advocating for their release. The Menendez family has started an online petition that can be found at justiceforericandlyle.org. If you would like to support their release, please go to this website and sign their petition. Erik and Lyle committed a heinous crime when they shotgunned their parents to death in 1989. This is something that the pair have regretted every day since. As victims of abuse, they have more than served their time. What these two needed was help that they weren't getting from their parents. Personally, I had to watch the testimony to make up my mind if they were lying or not. And after seeing them tell their story, I absolutely believe them.
I think there's too many details that you can't have made up. Like, there's some things that they have said that you can't make that up.
Absolutely.
But
so this was a long one.
Yeah. We appreciate you guys sticking through. If you guys made it this far, leave a boat emoji.
Please let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Hit the like button, share this video. I think we talked about a lot of things that aren't talked about everywhere. So send this to your friends and family. You know, the drill.
Make sure you head on over to Instagram and TikTok and follow us there at Spooky Sleuths Pod. We've done quite a bit on the Menendez boys over there too.
Yeah. So, final thoughts from you. I didn't ask you.
I mean, I believe them. I think that all happened.
So your opinion changed once you heard all of their
I
testimony?
think that there is too many details. Like I said, that I don't think you can make it up.
That's fair.
It was the cinnamon and lemons, I think, for me.
Yeah. Me too.
I just said cinnamon.
Cinnamon.
Yeah, I can't say the word appropriately. But that's where I'm at. Let us know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure you head on... Nope. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, make sure you guys leave us a rate and review there. And you can actually leave us a comment on Spotify now as well, letting us know your opinion. And next week, we'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming.
Enjoy this bonus episode.
And on that note,
Stay spooky, friends.